What happens when the world's most logical mind is asked a question no science can answer? When Jordan Peterson challenged Elon Musk on the existence of God, no one expected what followed. One simple question shattered everything. And Elon's response left the entire room breathless. Before we continue this incredible story, let us know where you're watching from. If you enjoy stories like this, subscribe to the channel, because tomorrow we have another inspiring story you won't want to miss. The debate hall was unlike any Elon Musk had ever entered. There were no displays, no projections, no stage lighting tuned for dramatic reveals. Just two chairs on a bare wooden platform, a modest table between them, and a silent, expectant crowd stretching into the dimly lit room. The audience had gathered not for entertainment, but for something deeper. Two minds colliding in search of truth. Jordan Peterson sat with his hands folded, eyes calm but intent. Known for his piercing questions and philosophical depth, he looked not as an adversary, but as a man prepared to probe. Across from him, Elon Musk adjusted his collar and sat down. For once, he looked more human than icon, his demeanor quieter, more introspective than usual. There was no opening montage, no fanfare, just a brief welcome and an immediate shift into what everyone had come for. Peterson leaned forward, his tone level but penetrating. "Do you believe in God?" he asked. The question hung in the air. Elon didn't smile, didn't retreat into sarcasm. He didn't rush to speak. Instead, he stared down for a long moment, his thoughts clearly moving faster than his words. Then, looking up, he answered slowly, deliberately, "I believe in reason." The crowd sat motionless, and the world leaned in. Peterson didn't let the moment pass. With his voice steady, he leaned in a little closer and asked, "Can reason alone explain purpose?" His tone wasn't combative, it was curious, persistent. The question struck a nerve. Elon's brow furrowed. He didn't scoff or deflect. He paused, clearly thinking. "I build," Elon finally said, speaking not with confidence, but contemplation. "I create, that's my purpose. To improve life through innovation." There was no applause, just silence, the kind that settles in when people sense something real is happening. Peterson nodded slightly, absorbing the answer. Then he followed up, his voice soft but sharp. "But who defines what's good, Elon? Who decides what should be created and what shouldn't?" Elon blinked, caught off guard. Not by the words, but by their implication. His answer had always seemed enough before, but now it hung in the air, incomplete. The audience felt the shift. This wasn't a debate for victory, it was a conversation pressing into deeper places. Elon didn't immediately respond. He sat with the question, eyes down, as if somewhere inside a door had opened. And in that pause, the world watching sensed it too. This wasn't going to be the conversation they expected. It was going to be something more. Elon Musk grew up in a world shaped by numbers, formulas, and testable ideas. Raised in South Africa, his early fascination with engineering and technology led him to view the universe as a giant puzzle, one that could be solved with enough effort and intellect. Faith wasn't something he rejected outright. It just never seemed necessary. Not when logic could answer most questions, or at least point the way forward. He didn't mock religion, nor did he chase it. He simply lived without it. But leadership had its own price. As the years passed, the companies grew, the responsibilities multiplied, and the spotlight never faded. Even with innovation at his fingertips and success by every measurable standard, there were nights when silence filled the space louder than applause ever could. Late at night, alone in his study or pacing under the stars, he would sometimes ask himself, "What is all this for? Is progress enough? Is building the future the same as living with meaning?" He never voiced those questions publicly. They were private thoughts, kept buried beneath schedules, launch windows, and quarterly goals. But tonight, across from Jordan Peterson, those questions came rushing back, uninvited but undeniable. Peterson's words weren't philosophical sparring. They felt personal. They landed in the places Elon rarely allowed himself to visit, not because he had something to prove, but because something deeper was stirring. As the cameras rolled and the world watched, Elon wasn't just hearing a challenge to his beliefs. He was hearing a reflection of something he hadn't named yet, a restlessness that logic alone had never fully answered, and for the first time in a long time, he allowed himself to feel it. Not as a CEO, not as a creator, but as a man searching for something more. The lights overhead cast a soft glow across the stage as Elon Musk leaned forward, his hands clasped in front of him. The audience was silent, completely locked into the intensity of the moment. "We solve problems," Elon said, his voice steady, though something in his eyes suggested reflection more than confidence. "That's what science is for. That's how we move forward. We identify issues, climate change, transportation, connectivity, and we create solutions. That's how we progress as a civilization." Jordan Peterson nodded slowly, but didn't break eye contact. "And who," he asked, "defines what counts as a problem?" Elon blinked, slightly caught off guard. "Well," he began, pausing, "I suppose we look at what causes harm, what limits potential, what makes life harder." "For whom?" Peterson pressed gently. "And based on what values?" "Progress implies a direction. How do we know which direction is right without a map?" Elon shifted in his seat, not defensive but intrigued. "I just want to help people," he said, almost quietly. "I want to make things better. That's what drives me. That's what I wake up thinking about every day." Peterson tilted his head. "Why?" There was a pause. Elon didn't answer immediately, his brow furrowed, and he glanced toward the audience before returning his gaze to Peterson. "I don't know," he said honestly. "It's not something I chose. It's like this internal compulsion, a need to improve things, to make the future less scary, more livable." Peterson leaned in slightly. "That's not logic. That's something else, something deeper." Elon nodded slowly. "You might be right." Peterson didn't let up. "You speak about building a better world, but what defines better? Is it comfort, efficiency, longevity? Or is it love, compassion, meaning?" Elon exhaled, not in frustration, but in surrender to the weight of the question. "I think I used to know," he said quietly. "At least, I thought I did. Now, I'm not so sure anymore." The audience stirred, sensing the moment's depth. This wasn't a debate, it was a peeling back. Musk, the innovator who once seemed to have an answer for everything, was admitting that not every answer could be engineered. Not every solution came from code or physics. Some questions didn't yield to equations. Some truths whispered instead of announced. Peterson sat back for a moment, giving Elon space to sit with his own uncertainty. Then he said, "Maybe that's where faith begins, not with knowing everything, but with being honest about what we don't know." Elon looked at him, his expression unreadable. But his voice, when it came, was different now. "I've built rockets, I've built companies, but right now I feel like I'm standing at the edge of something I don't understand, and for once, I'm not trying to fix it. I'm just listening." Peterson didn't respond right away. He simply nodded. The audience remained frozen, not in suspense, but in reverence. Something real was happening, something unplanned. A man famous for logic was beginning to wonder if the most important truths weren't things to be solved, but things to be trusted. And that shift, it was only just beginning. The room remained silent, save for the quiet hum of the stage lights and the breathless anticipation of the audience. Jordan Peterson leaned forward slightly, his voice soft but precise. "Elon," he asked, "can science measure peace? Can it quantify love or the weight of a soul?" Elon didn't respond right away. His fingers tapped lightly on his knee, his gaze cast downward. When he looked up again, there was something different in his expression. less certainty, more openness. "I don't think it can," he said. "Science can observe behaviors, brain activity, chemical reactions, but that's not the same thing as understanding what peace feels like, or what it means to love someone." Peterson nodded, giving him space to continue. "There's this restlessness," Elon said, pausing to find the right words. "When the launches are over, when the labs go quiet, when everyone else goes home, I'm still awake. I've solved the equations, hit the targets, but there's this silence, not peaceful, just empty." He didn't look at Peterson as he said it. His eyes drifted toward the crowd, as if searching for something among their faces. Then he looked back. "I've never really stopped to think about morality," he admitted. "Not in a structured way. I just try to do what feels right, what seems helpful. That's always been enough, for the world, for the projects, even for my teams." Peterson waited for a moment, then said gently, "But feelings shift, Elon. Cultures shift. Even reason evolves with time. Truth." That landed heavier than Elon expected. He took a long breath and leaned back slightly in his chair. "You're right," he said slowly, "and I've never said this aloud before. But I wonder if I've been missing something. Something deeper than logic or outcomes. Something I couldn't build or test or control." He glanced toward the audience again, then turned his attention fully to Peterson. "There's a part of me that's always believed the answers would come with time, or discovery, or data. But what if some answers only come when you stop trying to solve them?" Peterson gave a faint smile. "That's the beginning of humility, and perhaps the beginning of belief." Elon didn't respond right away, but his silence didn't feel like resistance. It felt like searching. "I've always respected belief," he said eventually, "even if I didn't understand it. But I thought faith was about blind acceptance, about rules, about not questioning." Peterson's eyes softened. "True faith welcomes questions, Elon. It's not the absence of doubt. It's what we do in the face of it. Faith doesn't silence your mind. It awakens your soul." That sentence lingered. Elon looked down at his hands, then up again. "You're making me wonder," he said. "About what I've ignored, about what I've dismissed." Peterson nodded. "That's all I hoped for. Not a conversion, just a crack in the wall." Elon gave a quiet laugh, small, uncertain, but genuine. "I think the wall's been cracking for a while," he admitted. "I just didn't want to see it." In the crowd, some wiped their eyes. Others simply sat in stunned silence. This wasn't a debate anymore. It wasn't even a discussion. It was a revelation in motion. And Elon Musk, the man known for building futures, was now quietly confronting his own. That night, long after the debate had ended and the audience had returned home, Elon Musk sat alone in his study. The glow of the monitors was off. The room, usually humming with thought and motion, was still. He sat in silence, elbows resting on the desk, head in his hands. The words from earlier echoed over and over, louder than any applause. "Without God, how do you define good?" It haunted him, not because he didn't have an answer, but because he'd never thought to ask the question in that way. His mind drifted to the conversation, replaying Peterson's tone, the way he looked at him, not as an adversary, but as a man reaching toward another man's soul. Elon wasn't used to that. Most debates were intellectual skirmishes. This had been something else. He stood and crossed the room to one of his bookshelves, running a hand over the spines. Most were about physics, space, innovation. But tucked near the end, behind a volume on artificial intelligence, was something he hadn't touched in decades. A small Bible, a gift from his childhood. He opened it. The pages smelled old. He didn't know what he was looking for, but he kept flipping through, scanning verses he once heard in Sunday school. He thought about his early years in South Africa. He remembered churches, white walls, stained glass, hymns he didn't fully understand but felt deep in his chest. He remembered asking questions. Who made the stars? What happens when we die? He remembered silence from adults who didn't know how to explain, and how quickly logic became his refuge. Now, as a man who had sent rockets into orbit, built cars that drive themselves, and mapped the stars, those same questions returned, not to be answered, but to be heard. He pulled out another book, this one a gift from a colleague, unread until now. Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis. He skimmed pages and paused at a passage. If I find in myself a desire which no experience in this world can satisfy, the most probable explanation is that I was made for another world. That hit hard. Elon closed the book and leaned back, eyes fixed on the ceiling. A lifetime of achievement, yet a hunger remained. Something deeper than legacy, deeper than fame. He didn't know why he did it. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was desperation. Maybe it was hope. But for the first time in his adult life, Elon closed his eyes and whispered the words he'd never let himself say. If you're there, show me. There was no booming voice, no miracle, no vision. But there was stillness. Not empty, not cold, just still. Something shifted inside him. Not clarity, but openness. He didn't suddenly believe, but he wasn't resisting anymore. For the rest of the night, Elon stayed there, reading, reflecting, remembering. He jotted questions in a notebook, not for solving, but for exploring, the kind of questions that couldn't be answered in numbers. Questions of the soul. In the quiet of his study, something had begun, not an answer, but an invitation. And for the first time, Elon Musk, engineer, innovator, visionary, allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, there was more to discover than the universe outside. Maybe the real journey was just beginning. The following week, Elon Musk made a quiet visit to Jordan Peterson's private office. No media, no cameras, no audience, just two men seated across from one another, the tension of debate replaced now by something more intimate. Reflection, curiosity, even humility. Elon broke the silence first. "I'm not ready to believe," he said carefully, his voice lower than usual. "But I want to understand." Jordan looked at him, not with surprise, but with a gentle knowing. "Faith begins with wanting," he replied softly. Elon leaned forward slightly, resting his hands on his knees. "For years, I've been building machines, rockets, systems, even dreams. I've chased innovation like it was the only thing that mattered, and maybe it was. Until now." He paused, his voice heavy. "Now, I feel like I've been missing the why. I've been focused on creating, but I think I'm being called to understand what I've been creating for." Peterson didn't speak right away. He just nodded, as if giving Elon space to find his next words. "I don't know how to believe in something I can't measure," Elon admitted. "That's my entire framework. Metrics, code, data. Everything I do is about control, about proof. So how do I trust something I can't quantify?" Jordan leaned forward, his voice steady but full of warmth. "It starts by surrendering what you can measure, not rejecting it, but holding it loosely. Because real trust isn't found in certainty. It's born in mystery." Elon looked down, as if turning those words over in his mind. "I've always thought mystery was the enemy of progress," he murmured. Peterson smiled. "No, mystery is what gives progress its meaning." They sat for a long moment in silence, then Elon spoke again. "I'm not trying to convert, I'm just opening a door I kept locked for a long time." Peterson nodded. "That's all faith ever asks. Not perfection, just openness." Elon gave a small nod in return. Not of certainty, but of willingness. And that perhaps was where wisdom began. Months had passed since the debate that had sparked headlines around the world. Elon Musk had returned to his life, launches, meetings, development roadmaps. But something had changed. Quietly, beneath the surface, he had begun a journey no algorithm could map, no prototype could perfect. He wasn't chasing breakthroughs anymore. He was seeking something deeper. Peace, clarity, purpose. On a cool spring evening, Elon stepped onto a stage in San Francisco. The room was packed, not with engineers and venture capitalists, but with students, thinkers, and everyday people. There were no flashy slides behind him, no laser shows, no countdowns to the next big thing. Just a single wooden stool, a glass of water, and Elon Musk, standing in stillness. He looked out over the audience and took a breath. "I'm not here to talk about rockets tonight," he began. "Not about Mars, AI, or any of the usual headlines. Tonight, I want to talk about something else. Something I've spent the last few months learning to face." He paused, his hands resting gently on the edge of the stool. The room was quiet, expectant. A while ago, I was in a conversation that challenged everything I thought I knew. Jordan Peterson asked me a question. "Without God, how do you define good?" And I didn't have an answer. I still don't, not a complete one. But that moment opened something in me. He looked down for a second, collecting himself, then back at the crowd. "I've spent my life creating, solving problems, building what others said couldn't be built. But the truth is, late at night, I'd often wonder, why? Why am I doing this? Why does it matter?" A woman in the front row wiped a tear from her cheek. "Over the past few months," Elon continued, "I started reading again. Not just science journals, but scripture, philosophy. Stories written by people who didn't have code or rockets, but who still changed the world with belief. And I started to pray, not publicly, just quietly, unsure of what I was doing, but something in me wanted to know if I was being heard." He took a breath, slower this time. "Maybe purpose isn't found in progress," he said. "Maybe it's found in surrender." The room held its breath. "I'm not here to convert anyone. I'm not claiming to have all the answers. But I do know this. There's a peace I've found lately that I didn't know I was missing. It didn't come from success. It didn't come from solving. It came from letting go of the need to solve everything." He stepped forward slightly, his voice soft but certain. "Faith, I've learned, isn't a final answer. It's a better question, one that doesn't shut doors but opens them. One that doesn't give you control, but gives you peace in the lack of it." The crowd sat in reverent silence. Not because they were shocked, but because they understood. Elon Musk, the man of logic, had stepped into mystery and brought them with him. He gave a small nod of thanks, and for the first time in a long time, he looked free. Elon Musk stood at the edge of the stage, no spotlight, just soft light catching the quiet on his face. He looked directly into the camera, not with certainty, but with something more honest. "If you've ever felt like the answers don't make sense," he said gently, "keep asking." His voice was steady but humble. "There's something more out there. I'm still learning, you can too." Then he paused, not for effect, but to let the words settle. A faint smile crossed his face, the kind of smile that only comes after wrestling with deep questions and choosing not to run from them. In that moment, he didn't seem like a billionaire or a tech titan. He seemed like a man who had just begun to understand the weight of surrender. The screen faded to black. If this inspiring story moved your heart, subscribe now for more powerful journeys into faith, reason, and the courage to believe in something greater than ourselves.